Hi, welcome to Encouraging Student Advocacy Through Spoken Word. I'm Lucy Dawson.
I'm Matt Kerner.
And we're both teachers at Cary Academy in Cary, North Carolina. I teach language arts, 7th grade, and world history.
I teach 7th grade language arts as well. And we just want to give you this little disclaimer that we were prepared to do this in person. So bear with us as we try to make this as interactive and as engaging as possible through video.
So just to give you sort of a quick overview of what we're going to go over today, this is all about a spoken word poetry unit that we did that ended in a poetry slam. So we'll begin with the why. Why did we want to do this unit? What was sort of the rationale and the purpose?
We'll talk a little bit about the how we actually rolled it out involving community members and guest experts.
We'll get into the what, the content, what poetry prompts we use, how we set up the poetry slam at the end.
And, even if this doesn't align perfectly with what you are designing in your own classroom, we're hoping that there are takeaways that you could use regarding either social justice initiatives, service learning, spoken word poetry, or just performance language arts instruction.
Here we go. So starting off with why we wanted to do this, there's a lot of reasons. We wanted to celebrate and uplift and elevate hip hop, spoken word, and rap as wonderful and legitimate art forms and forms of expression.
We also wanted students to be on their feet, talking about things they're passionate about. We've got a long service learning thematic approach in the 7th grade that starts in August and goes all the way through June. We're often talking about advocacy, education, and action in regards to social issues. So this culminating event with the spoken word poetry slam was a chance for all 100 of our 7th grade students to get up on their feet and speak passionately about something that was important to them.
We also wanted to look, of course, at skills, looking at poetic devices, economy of language, economy of words, sound devices, and how to use language in powerful ways.
Yes, performance is also an important piece of that. Standing, public speaking, sharing your ideas, all of those align with the LA curriculum that we have.
Yeah, how to use your voice and your body to create meaning through body language, pacing, rhythm, rhyme. So why don't we all take 5 minutes to stop and do an interactive activity, so we're just not talking at you the whole time. And if you could do 2 things. First of all, list out any poems, hip hop songs, rap songs, spoken word pieces that you know of that address social justice issues.
And then secondly, just thinking about your own community, we really do try to keep this pretty local to the Triangle of North Carolina. List any social justice issues that are most relevant to you and to your students right now. In the past, our students have looked at climate change, they've looked at anti-Asian hate, they've looked at women's rights issues. So there are a lot of different things that are so relevant to our world now. And you can just kind of make a list of those to frame what you would want your students to address.
See you in 5 minutes. So now we're going to get to the how. We've already covered our rationale and the why, but this is sort of our methodology and best practices we found as we moved through this unit. The first, which we feel really strongly about, is bringing in guest experts, bringing in local artists. We got to the privilege of bringing in Josh Rousey and Lauren Bullock, who are here in the Triangle. Josh Rousey has deep expertise in hip hop and rap, and Lauren is a spoken word poet, published poet, who had so much to bring to the table. So many reasons to do this. Josh is also a CA alum, so pulling from our own community was a really meaningful experience. Bringing in authentic voices to talk about hip hop and rap. Also, the importance of lifting up Black and Brown voices in our community and supporting Black and Brown artists is really important to us as well.
It felt a lot more real to actually have people in our community that are connected to Cary Academy to walk our students through the model that we chose for exploring poetry, hip hop, and rap. Furthermore, these two are both have a little bit of a celebrity status, so they were extremely impressive to the students, and it encouraged their engagement even more than we could.
Yes, just to have new faces and new voices in the classroom is always good for engagement.
So with that in mind, we really did work on a workshop model. Lucy and I were more off to the side, and Rowdy, Josh, and Lauren were very much involved with every process. So to make this work, the workshop model, we had to create a safe space. Lauren kept saying, and it became a kind of a rallying cry for our students, peace, love, and family, focusing on that idea of we are a family, even in our classrooms, even at, at Carey Academy. So it was a very safe space, and that was established clearly. There were a lot of guidelines and kind of rules to talk about all of the process. As you can see here, our students are working through prompts. It was a situation where we were in groups of combined classes, so anywhere from 20 to 30 kids were working together at any given time. And there was a lot of interaction and collaboration as they went through a new form that they hadn't really thought about. There was a basic understanding of some poetry and poetic terms and literature involved with expression, but they had never done anything like this before. So in order to create that safe space, the workshop model was very effective. And it was similar to what Lauren and Josh do in their professional careers when they're working on new songs or new poetry.
As any good teacher does, you show good, powerful examples, right? So we had some really strong mentor texts and examples from famous and notable poets and spoken word artists. One here is Hair by Elizabeth Acevedo. And this aligned with the prompt that we had, which was do an ode to something about yourself or anything that you really love. And overall, you'll see in these next examples that we also tried to choose young voices, youth voices in the world.
Again, using the safe space, there was a lot of just centering before we even got into these mentor texts. So that previous picture, I'll just see if we can bring that up, is this trust circle started every class and every interaction. And students were encouraged to, but not required to participate. However, getting up on your feet and kind of going through some breathing and centering activities really helped with the entire process and that idea of creating a safe workshop space. So the next mentor text we used was N400 Erasure, which was a erasure poem. So the students were doing these as well. So they were using texts that they could erase words from to create meaningful, expressive poetry of their own. And then we tied that in with N400 Erasure, which was one of the finalists at the 21st Annual Youth Speaks Teen Poetry Slam. Yujan took one of the application for citizenship, the N400 form, and erased it to indicate how difficult it is to become an American in any given sense of the word.
Our kids also took the poem The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman, her amazing performance during the inauguration, and used that as an erasure poem where they blocked out certain words to create a new piece from her text.
Here again is another example of the centering piece. As we moved from our workshop model into bigger venues, ultimately the final poetry slam was in our gym. We continued to use the same format each time. So here's another example of the centering circle where students can prepare to be on stage.
We also used different pieces from rap. So we used Tupac's Thug's Mansion and listened to it, and also listened to and watched a poem that he actually wrote, and I think he wrote it in high school. Right?
Yeah.
So really blending together and talking about the poetry of rap and how the two forms are very aligned.
And these are things that students can really get engaged with, even though Tupac is from a previous generation. They still know his work, and to hear that he wrote poetry on a regular basis as a way to almost deal with everything in his life, the kids, that truly resonated with them. Here's another example of some interactive. This was a very physical workshop. Here's another example of these students. They were actually doing freeze frames or pause models for different stanzas of Amanda Gorman's poem from the inauguration. So the rest of the crew had to guess what their intention was with each of these freeze frames, focusing in on the tableau to see what the meaning was and to see if the imagery that the people were acting out actually matched the interpretation of the rest of the class. So the literary piece was throughout as well. And it was great to see the kids get on their feet and do that kind of analysis and with physicality.
Right, taking a close examination of the language and bringing it to life.
Here's another one.
Yeah.
Some of them were more successful than others, and so it was basically a guessing game to notice, what image was being captured here with the body. And so this one I think was pretty successful, specifically with the kids on the ground.
Joshua Bennett is another fabulous spoken word artist and who really uses his voice and pacing and his body to layer in meanings to his performance. And so we use some of his pieces when we talked about using our voice and our bodies to further bring expression, interpretation to our poetry.
And another piece about Joshua Bennett is that, just to bring some relevance to all of this and to show how incredible the form is, we did focus on performances that were part of the White House Poetry Slam, which really elevated the entire form.
So now we come to our next activity, which is we'd love for you to think about organizations in your local community that you might be able to reach out to get them involved in this unit of study. It might be local artists, it might be folks who are alums of your school, parents. Just think far and wide about your network of your school and think about people that you could bring in to be a part of this unit.
So often in independent schools, we can just get caught in our own personal bubble. So it's sometimes really important to break out of that and reach out to people in our community that are our neighbors and activists locally.
See you in 5 minutes. Okay, so finally we get to the what, sort of the more content part of our presentation. So one thing that we did is we gathered some prompts we thought could really have some mileage for our students and sort of resonate and connect with them. Things like, where you start every single line of the poem with the same line, like you told me that, and then it starts that feeling of repetition. Or use a random word generator and get 6 words and put them in a poem, in a way to kind of keep things fresh and get kids thinking creatively.
We also did the ode format, and that actually really connected to what the poem Hair. And the interesting thing about that was that it was an ode to something that the poet loved, but it's also a situation where that object can be part of your identity, and it's not all necessarily received by others the same way. So there was a lot behind that ode prompt that we used, and a lot of kids really embraced that overall. We had tons and tons of prompts. These are just some that came out, but finishing sentences at the moment the whole world seemed to fit in a lot of these prompts just trigger the creative juices. And honestly, a lot of our kids started with these prompts, but went into their own formats and created their own structures. So we also had a sound that you grew up hearing, focusing on that idea of where do you come from. We have a lot of kids that love math and science, so we try to do some cross-curricular connections in their poetry. And we also, the last prompt was really focused on that idea of what works and what does in our society, thinking about something that maybe is broken or not broken.
Yeah, so these different prompts got kids thinking about, for example, sensory imagery, right? Thinking about the sound or kind of approaching something maybe familiar in an unusual or kind of fresh way. And then, of course, the big event was the slam. And we just can't say enough about how kind of meaningful and memorable that experience was. Just the electricity in the room and how so many, almost all of our 7th graders, we have 108, got up there and read their poem, which was pretty magical.
And this image just captures everything. You have Lauren over there taking a lunch break because it was quite an affair. It was almost 2 hours of the total programming. But you'll see also how accessible Josh Rousey was. He's there with 2 of our students going over beats and rhythm, right before they go up, and they were completely and utterly taken by his expertise and his approachability. So right before they're about to perform, right now they're actually doing some freestyling and bar creation during our actual final presentation.
Just a quick note about pacing. It was about a 3.5-week unit. Doesn't mean you have to do that. But in the beginning, we created a safe space. We threw out some prompts. The kids drafted. Every day throughout the 3.5 weeks, we had them get up and do something performative just to build that confidence and get them more relaxed in that setting. We started with kind of language at the beginning, and then we got more into voice, into body, and then more of the editing and the polishing part of the rhythm towards the end, leading up to the final performance.
And it just worked out with the COVID. So we had a class with one group on Monday, Tuesday, another class on Thursday, Friday. And so it was excellent to have the experts in on Monday, Tuesday to work with the students. And then we were able to reinforce some of the guidelines that the experts set on Thursday, Friday to follow up. So there's this really strong formative experience having those extra classes in between our experts, giving them the workshop guidance.
Here are just some final shots of the actual slam itself. Again, we had, kids were nervous. Of course, it's hard to go up in front of your whole class and perform. So we have a student here who was really nervous, but her friend got up and held her hand. And those kind of moments were so incredible for community building and bonding and coming together as a 7th grade.
This goes into the idea of just, language arts, getting down in the nitty gritty of the competencies that we wanted as far as writing is concerned, poetic expression. We spent a lot of time with the idea that writing is a process. So these poems, even though some were, extremely short or, maybe a minute or two, we spent a lot of time rewriting and considering every word throughout. So as far as the actual writing process, we were really engaged with that throughout the entire project.
This is the rubric. We're not going to go into this in detail, but you can see the competencies we were looking for in terms of imagery, sound devices, delivery, and attitude throughout. Just some thoughts about how to assess something as big as this.
And that's something that we've worked on throughout language arts and in world history, this idea of a growth mindset. I know that can sometimes be cliched, but we really do focus on that with every assessment, big or small. We really talk about your attitude of taking risks and embracing challenges. And our kids did that to a T in this project.
So let's end with this activity. We'll sign off after this, but write down 3 to 5 ways you could incorporate some of the ideas that we shared today, whether in a curriculum, just a video, or if you want to do a more fuller unit, like organize a slam.
Yeah, really focusing on an idea, what can you bring from your community that would engage your students and really push their learning forward? It doesn't have to be as big as a, poetry slam, but it could be something as just bringing in authentic voices from your neighborhoods.
Please reach out if you have any questions. We have our emails here, Lucy_Dawson@careacademy.org.
And Matthew_Kerner@careacademy.org. We are always willing to chat and talk about curriculum. We'd love to hear from you.
And the slides from this PowerPoint will be shared as well. Thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a great conference.
Yes, great success this year to everyone.